Welcome to our last Let's Connect Leaders webinar for this year. It is so great to see all of you tonight. And my name is Unju Park. I am a Shining Waters Regional Minister for Pastoral Relations and the Communities of Faith Support. This webinar is for both Shining Waters and Canadian Shield, like we have been doing. And the land both of our regional regions are situated is richly blessed and cared by the various groups of indigenous people. I can't name them all here, and we are grateful for their stewardship of the land as our areas are so big and vast. I'd like you to invite you to acknowledge the territories where you are joining from in the chat. And tonight I am joining you from Hamilton, Ontario, which is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon, One Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lake. And both Canadian Shield and Shining Waters Regional Councils are also an affirming ministry where we proclaim and thrive to live our faith that God's love is wider and more encompassing than we can imagine. Therefore, we affirm, include, and celebrate diversity in age, health, race, ethnicity, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and many more. And we are intentionally creating safe space where opportunities exist for all to participate according to their gifts and talents in all aspects of the life and ministry of the Regional Council. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you call us to be stewards of your abundance, the caretakers of all you have entrusted to us. Help us always to use your gifts wisely and teach us to share them generously. Send the Holy Spirit to work through us, bringing your messages to those we serve. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Well, tonight, I am delighted to introduce the presenter, our own Melody Duncanson Hales. She is a Canadian Shield Regional Minister for Communities of Faith Support, but she's also a stewardship officer from the philanthropy unit at the General Council office. She is deployed to work with Shining Waters and Canadian Shield regions. She's going to help us dive into the spirit of generosity and gratitude as we prepare ourselves move into the season of Advent and Christmas. Over to you, Melody.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for the very kind introduction, Unju. I'm grateful for the chance to be here. And I've just got this first slide up so you can make sure that you have my contact information. As Unju mentioned, I serve in both Canadian Shield and in Shining Waters with stewardship support. And the great joy of my work is working with local congregations and leadership to do coaching and to offer support, to connect with resources. I love talking about generosity and gratitude. I've done so for almost 2 decades now within the United Church, and I've seen some amazing things happen. So I'm grateful for your time tonight and for our conversations together. So as I put together our time today, I put together a couple of conversation questions that I think we'll be addressing in the presentation. But just some thoughts on where we might go. How do the themes of Advent speak to generosity and gratitude? How can we include more hospitality and welcome, which is the sharing of our time and our relationship building? And how can we invite deeper generosity this December? So these are the framing questions for tonight. The first question, what is Advent all about anyway? Well, Advent and Lent are both seasons of waiting. That's why we're using the purple this evening. And they're seasons of waiting and preparation and penance. Again, purple is the color of these traditionally in our Christian calendar. Now, during Lent, we await Christ's return from 40 days in the desert. But in Advent, we prepare for Christ's birth. The birth and the resurrection of Christ are intertwined. Yet these seasons of waiting look very different for us. Advent is a uniquely joyful time, a uniquely hopeful season in the church. We light candles amidst the darkness. We find warmth in the cold winter season, and we come together as family and friends to celebrate the coming of our hope. Advent is also the beginning of a new liturgical year. And this Advent season marks the beginning of year C in our Revised Common Lectionary, when we will be attending to the story of Jesus as told in the Gospel of Luke. But what is the season of Advent in our wider culture? Well, liturgically, Advent should see us slow down and turn inward. However, the rest of the world is already in Christmas mode. Oh my goodness, I just about lost it this week. I was in the grocery store already, and there were Christmas carols playing on Monday morning. I thought, wait a minute. That can't be right, but it's true. There are all kinds of things ramping up, parties and feasts and shopping and concerts, all kinds of things happening. And as worshiping communities, we need to balance the reality of our spiritual inclination to turn inward and to dwell on that waiting and that hopeful period of time spiritually, but also acknowledge the reality of our culture that is in full Christmas Santa Claus swing. It's the beginning of the year for us as Christians. So Advent is also a time for us to consider how we want to show up in the world, how we want to engage our faith lives for the coming year. It's supposed to be a time of preparation, not just for Christmas Day, but preparation for the whole life and ministry that Jesus' birth sets in motion. So I'm going to share with you now an image that we use a lot in our stewardship education, and we like to call it the discipleship flower. And it just allows us to lift up key spiritual practices for any disciple. Now, some folks use different words for discipleship in their communities of faith, but essentially what we're talking about here is how we choose to grow in our faith. And these are 6 areas that we should be practicing within our communities to grow together, to deepen our faith life, deepen our discipleship together in community. And you see in the flower, we have areas around loving service, worship, Bible study, sharing our faith, which is inviting people to come and connect with our community, generosity, and prayer. When we talk about this image, I like to draw close to the idea that there's no practice that is more important than another practice, and no practice that's involved here that is less than important. They're all equally important for the growth and development of us as disciples. And when we talk about this in stewardship education, oftentimes we discover that congregations, when they're not intentionally planning to lift up one of these discipleship practices, it starts to fall by the wayside. So when we think about generosity and the practice of generosity within our congregations, do we attend to it in the same way that we might attend to prayer or to service or to worship or to study or to faith sharing? Sometimes we think we can just save that conversation about generosity for one Sunday in the year, but I wonder if you could imagine saving prayer for one Sunday a year, or preaching about generosity as often as we talk about Easter. Well, you see, there's sometimes a little bit of an imbalance. So when we consider the year ahead and how we as individuals and as collective communities are going to deepen our own faith and be in the world, generosity needs to be part of that conversation. So a concrete idea using the discipleship flower is to consider setting some new liturgical year resolutions. Can we set goals for each of these areas of discipleship? For example, can we think about this as an individual spiritual practice? What would it look like for me to commit to attending in-person worship at least 25 times in the year? Or maybe I could make a goal around talking to a friend about my faith and invite them to come with me to worship. What would it be like to spend 10 minutes every morning to gratitude journal or to pray contemplatively? Or I could make a commitment, a step to sign up to pre-authorized giving to support my local congregation, and maybe think intentionally about proportional giving. Would it look like for me to set a goal to give 2% of my income or maybe more? So you can see we can use the discipleship flower as a way of helping our communities and ourselves as individuals to set some goals for the new year. So in preparation for our conversation, I asked a few United Church folk how generosity already shows up in your churches, and here are some ideas and some answers. And I'm going to stop the screen share in a moment so we can talk about what happens in your own local congregation around generosity during Advent and Christmas. And you can see here there's some ideas. White gift Sunday, Jesse tree or a mitten tree, sharing in Christmas hampers or a special collection. These are things that are traditional within United Churches. I do want to mention that White Gift Sunday. I saw a very interesting conversation on social media just this week around White Gift Sunday. For some folks, it's not. It's a tradition that seems quite unfamiliar. And maybe instead of a White Gift Sunday, maybe it's about Giving Sunday. How do we connect with local communities, local wider community efforts to give during the holiday season? Of course, White Gift Sunday comes out of an American tradition well over a century old where gifts were wrapped in plain paper. But sometimes there's some cultural connotations to using white as the gift wrap of choice. So I just want to raise that to think about how can we make a translation with that Sunday, and maybe it's to translate it into a Giving Sunday. But is there space during this time to dig into deeper generosity and involvement that will benefit both your community of faith and the giver beyond December? And how can we welcome folks into this kind of participation? So I'm just going to stop share right now. And I'm curious, in your experience, what are some of the things that your congregation does to celebrate giving during Advent and Christmas?
If you want to raise your hand, virtual hand,
Hi, Vivian.
Vivian did the real hand, but if you
virtual.
want to do the virtual
Yeah.
hand, you may want to do that. If you want to type something in the chat, you can also do that as well.
In the process of getting ready for our outreach boxes, and our church has approximately right now, I think we're at 38 families. It's been an exciting year because 5 of our families who've been receiving baskets for at least 5 to 6 years no longer need them this year. So it's a bit of a celebration. We have 6 new families joining us though, which is also wonderful that they found us. And the community comes together. The townships, the local townships gather food for us. The community donates money. And it was originally, it started by the United Church, Echo Band Bar River, working together to make a difference in people's lives. But the generosity, the school kids do a canned food drive, and like we got 5,000 cans last year from them, and it is just wonderful to see how wonderfully caring this community is, that taking care of each other, and it's pretty special.
And I think that's a wonderful point too you raised, Vivian, is that It's an opportunity for a whole wider community to be involved in generosity and in giving, and it's an intergenerational activity, right? We get to learn how to give together. Yeah. How about for other folks? What's going on in your churches? And I invite you to share that because maybe there's somebody here tonight that would love a new idea or a fresh insight.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
The school comes to the church and they help us, they sort canned goods. So they bring their canned goods to the church and the kids actually help us put the canned goods in the basket. So it's sort of a little bit more than just them doing, it fits into their study about, world, taking care of each other and poverty and everything. So it's just a little bit more. I forgot that, sorry.
And what's wonderful too, it's building that relationship. Again, school kids coming into that space, getting a sense of something that might be sacred or beyond themselves, and they start to know Echo Bay as part of their community. That's right, Echo Bay United Church, right? Margaret, I think you're from Thornhill, this Margaret. One of the things we do is to work with ecumenical church partners to put together hampers, sharing gift certificates. That's right. Hi, Margaret. Good to see you there. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you put in the chat?
I don't know that much about it because I don't physically help out with this particular project. I just
Right.
know that we changed during COVID and it was so well received that we left it as is after COVID to do
Great.
gift certificates instead of physical hampers. And it's easier as our folks get older to deliver them as well.
Yeah. And
So
it
it
also
works.
allows choice for the people that receive
Mhm.
the gift to have choice for
Mhm.
what's appropriate for them.
Mhm.
That's really lovely. Thanks. Judith, caring is sharing. Right. Having a sock drive, helping fill shoe boxes as gifts. Do you want to talk more about that?
Caring and sharing is the big thrust of our congregation. People go out and buy gift cards from places like Walmart or a grocery store, and these are donated to help needy families. The shoebox idea is kind of a fun one. We take a shoebox home and either with a friend or by ourselves sometimes, fill it with a list of a number of things from a list that's given to us. And we might not put everything in that is on the list, but we try to put in a little treat too, like a chocolate bar or something that, a book to read, something
Right.
that is a little bit more than just food and socks and stuff.
Mhm. Thanks so much, Judith. And Gloria's talking about having that mitten tree and providing gift cards for a local women's shelter. Did you want to talk about that? I'm just looking for Gloria. Don't have your camera on, so maybe you're happy with using the chat, but there you are. Yep.
Coming on there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't really say too much more of it. I'm not like as directly involved in it, but we've been doing the mitten tree for years and years. And I believe we used to have the basket ideas or the collection of things, but the gift card just is, as you were saying, so much more flexible for people
Yeah.
to use. It doesn't have that nice personal touch to it in a way, but it does let people choose what works best for them. So it seems to be a positive thing to do.
And it doesn't mean that you can't have a personal message to go with it, right? Like you can include it in a handwritten card. You can include artwork with it. You can, do something that's not just handing a gift card over. You can do something really special with that too.
I
Right.
like that suggestion. Thank you. I'll do that with mine. Thanks.
I'm doing a little bit of pulpit supply during this Advent season, and we're talking about having one of the Sundays being a giving Sunday. And I asked the congregation what they like to do and one of the things they do, and they do a sock drive. And I've seen this idea with a few other clergy, a Sock It To Me Sunday, where the worship leader stands in the middle of the space of the sanctuary with a laundry basket and hopefully some eye protection. And people try to aim for the laundry basket. And they throw all their pairs of socks at the worship leader. And that's a fun way to celebrate some abundance. Any other things that happen in your congregation that you like to celebrate generosity? I'm sure there's a number of different activities, not just at Christmas time, but through the whole year.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. One, I'm aware I'm new to the board in Roncesvalles in Toronto, and I'm aware of what I don't know is what I'm not aware of what we do. And if I'm not aware, that tells me our congregation's not aware. So I
Yeah.
appreciate even the ideas. I'm like jotting down notes here. So that said, one of the things we do is we've relaunched a lunch program on Sunday at 1 o'clock for about 150 people.
Wow.
And we do personalized cards as much as possible leading up to Christmas. I know we do a collection of mittens and gloves and jackets and a number of things in a clothing drive. But I'm also seeing this kind of gap in my brain around what else do we do? So I'm really appreciating the question.
Gloria, you look like you have something to add. Yeah.
Just wanted to add on, well, I remembered that we have a coat drive that we're currently participating in, and that's with a couple of other agencies in town, along with a local dry cleaner that's making sure everything's cleaned before they're distributed. But the thing that I wanted to mention particularly that I like that we've started doing recently is that during the offering time, when whoever is sort of acknowledging the offering is lifting that up. There's a lot of focus on all the different kinds of giving. So outside of the financial giving, but people that are volunteering in any number of ways, both within the church and out in the community. So I'm really loving that sort of recognition of the whole range of giving that happens.
And I think that's fantastic, and it's really important communication. In our stewardship conversations, we often talk about three pillars of generosity and gratitude, and that's to inspire, invite, and thank. And those pillars are necessary for lifting up not only financial giving, but also the giving of time and service. So having that space within your worship to lift up gratitude for people's time, expertise, skill sets, in addition to financial giving, is fantastic. And those are really inspiring stories. So I'm thinking, Randall, what do we do, right? You're inspired at Roncesvalles with the feeding program, and yet not even knowing all of the things that you could be sharing an inspiring story about. So asking, your leadership, Randall, no, what are the stories we need to share? How do we communicate? What is actually happening here with the people that are coming to church? And in particular in this season, I'll talk about that in a moment, but remembering that we're welcoming a lot of folks that are coming and connecting in with our congregations, in particular in this season. I think I saw something in the chat here. Christine, from Massey, Interchurch Council. I don't know where you guys would be. It's a great ecumenical relationships that you have in Massey with St. Andrews, providing wow, you guys are working hard. Free lunch all year long, supported financially with the local community. And the last 2 years, St. Andrews hosted the giveaway table during Christmas. Fantastic. I don't know if you want to share more about that. And that's kind of small town at its best, I think, Christine. I want to share a little bit about the impact and what you see at Massey when you host these sorts of meals and these connections.
It's every Friday and all are welcome. So it's not, it includes people who come because they need the lunches, and they quite often take a lunch home with them for a person who's living and can't get out. It's partly for community, for people who are on their own, or just so many different things. But so the DSAB, our local social services, fund a lot of the food, but a lot of it comes in donations. And so people come eat there and they bring things with them. They bring a jar of pickles or a ham, and they, so it's turned out that it isn't very costly. And so we really see, 30 to 60 people in Zion Church basement. It's really amazing. Anyway, And then the giveaway table, instead of having a yard or a yard sale or whatever, I said, look, we've got all this stuff. We all have all this stuff that we could easily share. Let's just do a giveaway table. And we had, I don't know, tables in our basement of clothing and household items and just all kinds of things. And it was very successful. This year, we're not having it in December because we're having, we're recycling or reinventing the Journey to Bethlehem, which
Oh,
used
wonderful.
to be. So that's a big, and that's St. Andrews and Interchurch Council. So it's going to be instead of at Emery Farm, it's going to be up at the fairgrounds.
Wow.
And it's going to be a big. So we only have so much energy, but I like the idea of a sock drive or a sock toss or whatever.
Yeah.
I think specifically for Advent. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So getting ideas.
And for folks that are not familiar with the Journey to Bethlehem, that is a project that many small communities have engaged with prior to the pandemic, but it's really a lovely community builder where you tell the story of the Nativity as people do a walk through different tableaus, often with a guide. And I've seen really amazing ones done with interchurch families, ecumenical groups, the community groups. You know, it's a great way to connect with choirs and musicians and farmers who might actually have some livestock.
Yes, we have one of our neighbors is Cuban, and they're farming here. They came. So anyway, they're going to be the shepherds, and they've got the sheep. And we also have the caravan, this is a real community effort because the local caravan is going to bring people with mobility issues up to the fairground and drive them through it. So it's amazing how people come together for things.
Yeah. And out of that kind of project comes all kinds of abundance, generosity, people sharing, community building, and hospitality. So those are wonderful community events. Absolutely. I'll just give folks a moment before I return to the slide deck just to see if there's anything else people want to share about what they're up to in their local congregation. Go ahead, Vivian. I
just want to say we're very blessed. We have a church in Toronto that supports our outreach program. So we have become their outreach program. We are fortunate. Our minister for many years, Brian Lapierre, grew up there. And so in turn, send us a check every year and support us for our outreach program. So it's a real blessing to have these guys support us and be part of our outreach.
Wonderful. That's a really interesting relationship to build as well. And I think we're seeing that, Anju, within our regions where congregations are working directly with one another to support ministry on a really kind of a grassroots level, which is kind of exciting. I think we're seeing some of that. I was at Clergy Day Away a couple of weeks ago in Toronto, and I know that St. Luke's in downtown has a really thriving ministry, in particular with New Canadians. And some Shining Waters congregations are choosing to support that directly, along with other community ministries. So what you're talking about, Vivian, is definitely something that's happening. Has happened for many, many years, sort of very quietly. I see it up here, even on Manitoulin, where I'm joining you from tonight. There's some quiet congregations that are here and present because of some real generosity from folks from away, as we say. Yeah. So I'm just going to.
That is a good idea. No, that is a good idea to have these two regions work together. And this might be one of the ways that we can do together.
Yeah. Make some connections that way. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to return to the slide deck because we've touched on this a couple of times, but I want to raise the real gift that happens at this time of year. A huge part of the Christmas story, of course, is that Mary and Joseph are turned away from several people's homes. And there's lots of sermons that have been written about what that might mean as refugees or as strangers or as outcasts or as kin. There's so much good stuff out there around what it means to find home at Christmas. And for whatever reason, during Advent and in particular Christmas Eve, it's a real time when people feel very pulled into worship. Tradition, spiritually speaking, seeking. There's people that are looking for that rest and replenishment. People are really drawn into worship services, and maybe it's to have a sense of connection. Maybe it's out of tradition or out of family relationships that they feel really pulled at this point in time in the year into worship. Now, in my work, I hear from a lot of churches that evangelism is really hard. And that's a big word, evangelism. And for some of us, it's a word that we don't even like to use because of its connotations. And that's fair. But good hospitality and gentle invitation to participate is also evangelism. And that part does not need to be hard. So as we're thinking about generosity and gratitude, think about how your space gives and how are you providing a gift for others who are seeking a home at Christmas time. So I invite you to think about what your space is saying. Look at that biblical imagery. Look at the posters or the decor in your space. I know that for some people, it can be really unsettling to see that picture of the blonde Jesus everywhere, and that can be really difficult. I know that I found that in different churches where I keep thinking about the iconography around me. I think, does that make sense to me? Oh, sometimes it makes me feel really uncomfortable. I don't want to stay. Sometimes it's really engaging, and I think that's really amazing way of depicting their faith life. So think about what your surroundings are telling people. Are there pride flags? Is the space itself cluttered? Is there a lot of stuff or junk around, or is it very clean or sparse? Is it inviting and warm? And is it warm physically? Like, could you turn on your furnace maybe? I don't know. Are there enough hangers for the coats? I invite you to take a look, in particular in this week as we're preparing for Advent, for all of those community events, the ways that we're hosting the community in our buildings, to take a walk through your space and do it with fresh eyes and just imagine what people might be seeing if they're new to your space. Another question is, how do you reduce anxiety when you are welcoming people? I like to tell the story about moving from a very, very small presbytery where I was settled into Ottawa Presbytery, where I went from Temiskaming, where all the presbyters could sit around my dining room table in the manse, to Ottawa Presbytery, where we were serving in a presbytery that had over 100 communities of faith. And I went to my first presbytery meeting in Ottawa, and I came in the wrong door. So I came in facing the entire gathered community and supposed to coming in from the back. And I was late and I was in shock, and I saw this whole church full of people. And immediately I had two friends that saw my face. They knew who I was. They recognized me, and they just came up and stood beside me and walked me to a place, and they helped me feel connected. They helped me to belong. So the question is, how do we reduce anxiety? Are there people that are really skilled at welcoming others? Are they trained? Are they able to see somebody and say, is this your first time here? Or, hi, my name is Melody. Let me know if you have any questions. Is it clear what people should do and where they should go? If they have kids, can there be someone to slide in next to them and explain what happens with kids and youth in the congregation? Does the worship accommodate people who are new? Is the service something that is completely on its own, standalone worship service? This is what we do for this Sunday. Or is the service during Advent a way of connecting into a wider theme? Can it be a way to invite people to to keep coming back to worship, maybe a 4-week deep dive into something, so that people who might be coming as guests might feel engaged and want to know more? Is there a warm and genuine welcome offered at the beginning of worship. Now, I know that some folks have a regular minister that is consistent, in particular during Advent, but some of us are in churches that do rely a lot on licensed lay worship leaders or on pulpit supply. And sometimes there can be people that are switching in and out. But what we are aiming for here is a consistent, warm welcome so that you as a layperson, as a leader within your church, can offer that welcome at the beginning of worship. You know, maybe if you're doing verbal announcements, you can make sure that people give their names and maybe share a little bit of the context. Don't assume that everybody knows who everybody is, you know, and to share a little bit about the news around the community. Think about that actual worship. Do people know if they're supposed to stand up or sit down? Or is there a closing or an opening song that everybody seems to know, but we haven't printed the words up for a while? And what happens after worship? Is there a fellowship time? Can we as visitors be invited into that fellowship? If kids went down to Sunday school, is there a way for the adults to get connected with them again so kids aren't wandering alone through a big building? Ultimately, the goal of hospitality is to help people find a sense of belonging, to build relationship within your community. There are 4 stages of belonging. I'm taking these ideas from Rabbi Julia Appel. These 4 stages include to be noticed, to be named, to be known, and to be needed. Now, in a stewardship sense, the goal is not to try to get 100 people into your church one time each. What we want is for people to come and find themselves and to keep coming and to be connected in relationship. So what we want to do is be intentional about all of these stages of belonging. Greeters, for example, help with noticing a new person and maybe even with connecting a name. But it's through all of the other things that we do, the programs, the worship, the singing, the Sunday school, the outreach, the advocacy, the learning together, all of these things move people into a deeper sense of belonging, of developing a relationship where they can be known and needed. So during Advent, and in particular with Christmas Eve, tell those stories. Exactly what we heard around the church at Roncesvalles. Tell us what you're doing. Tell the inspiring stories of your congregation. Paint a picture of all the ways that you make meaning in people's lives. Mention what's happening next. What's going on in January? It is the new year after all. So help us get connected. If there's something that's exciting that people can join, share that, whether it's the choir or the Sunday school or maybe book studies. This might be also a really good time. I know many of our congregations don't do this now, but this might be the good time to have some physical announcement sheets for people to walk away with so they know what is happening throughout Advent and into Epiphany. I find that this time of year gets so busy with so many announcements, and if we're using PowerPoint, they just kind of keep scrolling past and scrolling past. And sometimes having something written down is super helpful, and that's something that we can share with guests. And for those of us who are in leadership, in particular on Christmas Eve, I would really encourage us not to make any jokes about how many visitors there are. We don't want to stand up in front of the congregation and say something about how it's so nice to see this church full that we haven't seen so full since Christmas, or nice to see you for your yearly visit, or things like that. We don't want to be flippant in our relationship building. People connect to us in our communities of faith for a lot of different reasons, and that is okay. And for many, many people, that particular worship service at this time of year is how they connect into their faith. And no one needs to be made feel guilty for that or less than, because that's how they're connecting in their faith. Comments that kind of are flippant or make light of people reaching out and making that decision to come and gather kind of speaks a little bit of scarcity. And sometimes it comes off as snarky or boring, kind of the same sad joke. So I promised some practical ideas for us to consider Ideas that have some already been mentioned. Some folks have also popped up in the conversation as well. And if I'm forgetting anything, or if you want to add to this list, go ahead, by all means, add it into the chat. And also during our time of questions and answers, we can have some conversation there too. But here are some ideas. The first thing is about being intentional. Always, all of these ideas are about being intentional. You have to plan for these things. So intentionally speak about how we are at the beginning of a new year. For new folks or visitors, have some way, a gateway, a path for people to participate, right? You can share those inspiring stories with what your community of faith has been up to in the past year. You can celebrate your wins together, and you can make that really clear pathway, clear invitation for people to go deeper with you. And that might look like sharing what's going to happen in Epiphany during worship. You can say, oh, we have this upcoming book study, or that in January, we're going to be doing this special project connected with a wider community, or upcoming, we're going to have a special 6-week focus for our Sunday school. You can talk about how the choir is always accepting new members, and you can make those connections. As people are gathering together, make participation easy. You could consider challenging new and longtime folks to set those spiritual goals. You can share that image of the discipleship flower if that helps. You know, invite congregation members to set a goal, maybe one goal per petal, or maybe have some examples for people to think about in this new year. And you as a church can set a goal for how you're going to start educating for each of these petals, including generosity. Now, this also could happen in January when resolution is top of mind for a lot of folks. A third idea to consider is have a place for all ages to volunteer during December. And I was in a conversation with a young mom a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying how important it felt to her to have something immediate to do with her family. So she was able to get her family out to church on a Sunday and to have somebody say, and we have this activity where we're going to be doing something together as a church right after church. It made it really easy to participate. And parents long for those projects to help, you know, engage young people, their children, in generosity for the season. And you can leave room within the space of your worship or within your worship, your community life, for people who are on the margins to feel part of things, to feel included, to feel that their service is of worth. You can say, hey, we're going to undress our mitten tree after worship, and we're going to be wrapping these gifts. So please join us. That's something really simple. Maybe it's around, hey, sign some Christmas cards, and we want to make sure that these are delivered. Or we're creating care packages for unhoused folks, like those shoe boxes we talked about. Or we're going to do a special event. We're going to go caroling at a senior's home just down the block. So join us after service for this easy way to participate. Start talking about generosity with others, not to others, because generosity ultimately is a spiritual practice. And if we have plans to encourage it, it's not only about a gift for those who are receiving it, but it's also a gift for us as disciples, as people who are giving our time and our money. And these are things that we can hand out. We can have a paper resource we can share as greeters, or we can personally invite people into. I am going to come back to that written invitation to give in a moment. That's a particular one that I want to focus on this evening. Another good idea to consider is to have a welcome letter specifically for Christmas Eve, something to hand out with the bulletin, something's physical. People can be shared with as a PDF for people who are participating online. A letter that would reduce some anxiety, saying something like, children are super welcome here. We love that they're loud, and that's okay. Or something like, we're having communion tonight in our church. We're going to tell you what that means. And again, within that written letter for Christmas Eve, invite deeper participation. Talk about what's coming up. Invite people to set those spiritual goals. And take some time to talk about what it means to give of ourselves, to give financially, to give our skills, to give our time. And you can talk about how the church is able to function with volunteers and donation. There's some examples you can think about, but you know your context best. Tell the story of how people connect. Christmas should also be a time to hold up and celebrate the wins that you've had as a church. Celebrate that you, for example, maybe completed the affirming process, or that your Sunday school or youth ministry is growing or doing something new, or that your community outreach team prepared meals to feed hungry people. You can celebrate these sorts of things. And even though liturgically it is not Christmas until December 25th, acknowledge that the secular world is already super deep into Christmas the minute that the calendar turns to December. So go ahead, lean into that warm feeling. Maybe sing some carols, maybe have some apple cider to go with the coffee after worship. Talk about the busyness of the season and how to hold space for being quiet. Because let's be honest, we aren't all doing that reflective waiting that we're supposed to be doing. And finally, sending cards full of gratitude. Send those Christmas cards. Getting mail is so special these days, and Christmas cards are I know when I get one, it's pretty rare these days, and it's right in my home. I put it on display for folks. I want to look at it, see it, read it. It is an investment of time and energy and money to send out Christmas cards, but it is really worthwhile in developing relationships and expressing gratitude and hope for the year past and the year ahead. And you can remember Christmas comes every year. So you don't have to do everything at once. You can build into it. You can take pictures of what happens in your church this year and share them for next year. You can think about what you want to do and add to your practices in the next year. Now, back to that sending out an invitation to give. I want to be very clear about this. Studies show that 30% of all giving within faith communities happens in the month of December. So December is a very reasonable time to send a letter to folks, inviting them to participate financially. And people often want to give more or give extra, but they need to be inspired and they need to be asked. So I'm sure that any of you who give charitable donations throughout the year are seeing an increase in Christmas appeals from nonprofits and other charities. Take a look at what those look like and maybe think about how to craft a message that is suitable for your own church to connect with others in this season. Have a conversation about what you think is successful, or what you might want to adapt for your own church. I wonder, does your church do this? Are you inviting donors and people who are giving, including in that meaning making? And are you learning from what others are doing? So finally, I have some tips on how to create an invitation to give, whether these are sent by email or handed out during worship or mailed. First, I'd like to invite you to really consider your audience. Who is receiving the invitation? Now, if you take any of our other stewardship training, you know that we encourage folks to write different letters to different groups of people. One letter might be going to folks who are giving monthly. Another letter might be crafted to give to folks who are giving casually, or to new members, or to longtime participants. If you aren't going to do that for the letter that needs to be ready like very soon, that's okay. But regardless, keep your audience in mind. Always think about who you're writing a letter to. Think about the whole invitation. What's on the envelope? What color is the paper? Can people read it well? Are there pictures that share the exciting things that are doing? When will the email show up in somebody's inbox? What's the subject line? How do you bold important words or use bullet points where important? Words are important, but the whole package is also important. Sometimes the medium is definitely the message. Humans are complicated emotional things. Your invitation to financial support is supposed to make them feel something. Another point, be intentional with people's names. Make sure you're using the most up-to-date contact list no misspelling, no dead naming, and make sure you're not sending an appeal out to somebody who's passed away in the last year. Sometimes when you're writing an invitation, a really effective invitation, it really helps to start with a question because it connects and invites people into the letter right off the bat. Question like, why do you love this place? Or can you believe what's happening? Or wouldn't you love to change the world? These are all really engaging questions. Starting with a question ties into giving people a problem to solve. So that's another part of the letter. We need your help to what? To grow, to protect our stained glass for the next 100 years, to help future generations find their home at our United Church. Remember, if there's no problem to solve, then people who give have nothing really to do. If your letter only outlines everything that's going right, we're maybe not hitting an emotional trigger to act. You don't also, please don't be super negative, but the rose-colored glasses also is less effective as well. We want something tangible that we can respond to. And this time of year, people often invite for a very specific project or for a specific program. Maybe that's where, we want you to be included in making a difference for the refugee family that we're supporting. Or it's about the nearby camp that we want to support for the summer. Or maybe it's about a new ministry in your church. Or maybe it's something specific like mission and service. Also remember to follow up with a thank you that lets folks know how they helped to solve the problem, even if it's just, we came together to help solve the problem. Great job, folks. So there's a pattern here that I'd like us to attend to, and that's to be clear about what the vision is, what's the goal, the enemy being what is the challenge, what's in the way, who is the hero, the people who give, right? And those who are served, the beneficiaries, or who do you connect with when you give. Every letter or email should have these 4 ideas represented. It's important to make it feel urgent. Donors respond when their donation can be used as soon as possible and that they need to make their donation as soon as possible. And year end works really well because folks are also under that urgency of a tax deadline. If you're doing a special campaign or a capital campaign or some kind of a matching donation, having goals can help with that. If you don't give a deadline or you make it feel semi-urgent, people like me who are often easily distracted, I'll just get that letter and say, oh, well, I'll get to that eventually, and I'll put the letter aside and maybe I'll think about it in the future. If your community of faith is experiencing a serious cash crunch, you can pull the emergency handle, but you can't do that every year. If you're in a cycle of running a deficit all year and then doing this big emergency appeal at the end of the year that ends up addressing that deficit, and then you just keep on in that pattern of behavior, that can be really wearing for a donor and for people who are giving in your congregation. It just feels like this whole emotional roller coaster. Nobody likes to feel like every year their church is on the bubble. So if you want to avoid that kind of roller coaster, it might be time to do some intentional stewardship conversations throughout the whole year to avoid that cash crunch. And so I'm available for further conversations on that. Make the invitation clear at least 3 times in your communication. Focus on the single most important thing. For example, we would love for you to be a monthly donor, or please make your donation by December 31st, or please fill out this pledge form. Make it really clear, make it simple, and ask that 3 times. That feels like a lot. I know, that's okay. But it's important because people need to hear it that often in order to get the message. And it's also okay to send a follow-up email asking people to act. Please make sure your communication is from a human and not from a machine. People often flip through the communication, skim it to see who signed it before they even read the rest of it. And studies have found that if it is signed from just this collective, the board, lots of people aren't even going to connect with it. But if it's from, oh, that's from my friend Unju, who I know, who signed her name to it, then I want to read more about it. And you can often add a postscript where it's urgent, or where you can offer a gift, a note of thanks, or have a clear ask in that postscript, where you can build again that personal relationship. A couple of other things to remember. The point isn't education. If you're inviting a financial contribution, you are writing to make people feel a certain way that encourages a gift. Attention spans are very short, so we want to make it easy to read. Make sure there's bullet points, the bolded text. Remember, the story we want to share is about the donor, about what they can do with their gift. Try not to make it about you or your church. That's harder than it sounds. So a short recap of all the awesome things you're up to in the year, but again, keep it simple, keep it short, and about what the church is doing is great. And honestly, add the pictures. They're great. Make the problem easy to understand, but make the solution easy too. And again, make it simple. So I feel like I've shared quite a lot of quick ideas. I'll include in the follow-up to our webinar tonight some of these concrete ideas and a letter of invitation as a sample that you could take a look at that includes some of these points. But I'm just going to stop talking for a hot minute here and turn it over to you to see if you have any ideas or questions or thoughts about what it would be like to make some practical decisions around inviting people to give at this time of year.
Our minister years ago used to send out a newsletter around Christmas, and he just put an envelope that was addressed to the church, and donations would come in. There was it didn't ask, but the envelope was in so it was sort of a subtle way. And I think it was, And
it made it easy for people to make that gift. Like that's the beauty of it. When we're inviting people, just like service, those projects of hospitality, pathways in, make it easy, make it accessible for folks to respond. Mm-hmm. Oh, hi, Christine. Yeah, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hi. Do you have any suggestions for how to work around the postal strike? Anything there?
Hand delivered? Yeah, in Massey, you might be able to get away with doing hand delivered or having teams to deliver. Yeah,
but also how to encourage people to do e-transfers. Like, do you have any
yes,
had an experience there?
Yes. Now, of course, we saw this during the pandemic as well, and that was a huge piece. A lot of congregations who had only had fairly limited ways, traditional ways to give on a Sunday morning, using a check in an envelope on the offering plate. Those congregations who had just that way to give and didn't offer other ways to give found it really challenging, and they're going to see that again, during the postal strike. So absolutely, having a way to give. We really encourage folks to take a look at Canada Helps. Canada Helps is its own nonprofit, but it is a nonprofit that supports other nonprofits across the country. And every United Church is already listed with Canada Helps. And Canada Helps provides great resourcing to do online giving, click here to give, helping with e-transfers, things like that. So I would really recommend that, and I'll add that in the follow-up email, how to connect with Canada Helps.
Thank you.
Margaret. Oh,
Something great I found out about Canada Helps when I made a donation to a charity on it was that they give you an immediate tax receipt
They do.
as well.
Yeah.
Which people really like, so.
Absolutely. And I believe you can personalize that tax receipt. You can add a note of thanks from your local congregation. Yeah. Chris, I see your hand up.
Hi. I just want to build on what you're saying about using Canada Helps. I think it is great. But the little bit of friction sometimes can be just to find the place. If you've got a common name, it's sometimes. So what we've done and what I've seen done elsewhere, actually, was at Hillhurst back at Easter, and they have it on a giant monitor. Put the QR code up.
There you go.
And it's, I know people say, yeah, not everyone has a phone. Almost everybody has a phone. And if you've never used a QR code before, you're kind of going, cool. This just took me right to the page.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so and that gets you past some of the friction. But we were having it back in Toronto. We had it have it on our on cards and things that you can find throughout the space.
Totally agree with you, Chris. At our regional meetings, I like to run around the space and put up QR codes to give directly to mission and service, so that we can do that during the worship service or during the meetings. But it's an easy way to do. Generate a QR code. When you use your phone, you take a picture of it, and it takes your web browser on your smartphone directly to the donations page. So you can do that direction yourself. Yeah. I think Trinity and Thunder Bay does that. Sorry, Trinity and North Bay. John, I think you have a QR code on your slides. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Any other questions about giving at this time of year? Making sure you say thank you. And remembering that something I didn't talk about was that you can do the inspire and the inviting piece with that clear ask. And in this season, sending out those tax receipts, easy time to say thank you. It always kind of surprises me when I hear of congregations that don't send out thank you cards, and this is the easiest time to do it. It's because you have to make a send out anyway with your tax receipts. So why not include a really lovely personalized thank you along with that? Chris. Yeah.
Can I ask? There's one of the things that I've seen. It's a challenge all through the year, but I think it gets amplified at around Advent and Christmas, and that is many people in the community are looking to give to our outreach programs or our social justice programs, and it's trying to invite that.
Yeah.
And being quite intentional sometimes about saying that you're not paying for the church, you're helping this other program.
Yeah.
Because there is some, and so we have a food and food bank program and a shelter program that we run out of East End, and in both cases they require a lot of money, and so we're happy to get it for those programs. But then how do it's inviting some of those same people in to say, but the church is kind of important too.
Right.
And so how do you anyway, I think that's been one of our struggles, that is being able to integrate some of that need that we need to keep these programs going. We actually need to have a church going too.
Yeah, and we need salaries, and we need
the roof fixed, and the
exactly.
and the pipes and all the rest of that. And sometimes that's been a challenge.
So yeah, I absolutely know that, and so the communication piece is really key for that. And you heard me mention that having different communication to different groups of people is really important. The one letters fits all does not really work. Sometimes when you have a short turnaround time, if you haven't thought about Advent, at least get something out for Advent now. But yeah, like to be intentional about that is important, because what we're doing is we're inviting people into deeper relationships. So they may be attracted by that program because they can see the immediacy. We're making our community better. But then the next step is that invitation to consider, well, how is it housed? Or how do you, what does it mean to have a spiritual sanctuary within the heart of the city? So again, developing the relationship with folks as they're giving, inviting them to take the next best step together with you, sharing one more part of that story. And that means intention. So that we have those communications sort of developed, thought about beforehand so that we can kind of time them through the year, that they're not kind of all at once to one person. Another really great tool around that, of course, is the narrative budget. So using the narrative budget in a way to say, because of you, these amazing things happen. And also we're able to keep them sustained because of salaries and buildings and things that house the ministry. The focus is always the ministry. We never ever talk about money apart from ministry. But it takes money to hold ministry and sustain ministry and support ministry. So telling that story is important. Absolutely.
Melody, can I share a picture here? This is
I think you should be. Can you share? I hope you can.
oh yeah, I can't do that.
Good. Okay.
I just this might give us a little chuckle here. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this the picture was taken by Nancy Ferguson, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and she went over to Ireland. I think it was on her sabbatical, and this is the local church that she went to worship on a Sunday, and this is how they do it.
Yeah.
This is I don't think it's ATM. It's just tap.
It's called a point of sale terminal.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's how they do it.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's something that's a little cutting edge for some United Church congregations, but there have been United Churches in the last 4 years, like since the pandemic, that have been piloting similar projects, even within Shining Waters, within GTA as well, where those point of sale terminals can be used for people to make their giving as they're coming into this space or as they're leaving. Also using for community events, to have a little sign or somebody hosting saying, we're here because, and here's another way to give. So all of those things that I'm talking about, making giving easy. And so just providing many, many ways for people to give, right? Just signing a check. I don't even use checks. I don't think I've had a check since I was 25 years old. I had to pay rent, maybe. I don't know. I don't have checks, whatever. I give by par because that's the easiest for me, but it takes time to develop that relationship, right, with a congregation to move into par. So some people are using those point of sale terminals. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. TipTapPay.com. Is one of the options that you see, and you sometimes see it. It's not. I don't think it's a not-for-profit, but it's a version of what Anju is showing that basically will show up. It's on a poster, often built right into a cardboard poster, and there'll be 2 or 3 taps, and you can pick which tap you want to do.
Yeah.
And we looked into that, and there were some drawbacks to that particular approach that caused us not to do it, but it is definitely. It's definitely an option and can be really easy, especially when you have a lot of the public going through and you're doing an event that may not already be seeking money. So you can do it with a pay what you can program, but you can also do it with a where it would otherwise be free, right? And that's a way that people might engage to pay.
Yeah, the philanthropy unit did a pilot project, and it wasn't with TipTap. It was with another, and I'm just, the name is escaping me, but a similar group that was doing some integrated services that had point of sale terminals, but also had like handheld terminals as well. And they were using it for congregations that were part of this were using it for like to get when they were selling tickets or doing sales, they could have those terminals present. If people are interested in exploring that, I can definitely let you know what the results were of the pilot. And so I'd invite you just to connect with me privately and say, hey, we're interested, and I can connect you in with some of those churches that were doing that within Shining Waters. So I'm just curious if there's any other questions or thoughts that people would like to share about generosity in the Advent and Christmas season. Well, I'm going to make an invitation tonight. And for those of you that stewardship conversation is a new conversation or something that you want to touch base on. It's something that you haven't had a conversation about in your church for a while. I am offering Getting Started in Stewardship webinar tomorrow, offered through ChurchX. So go to ChurchX, make your if you haven't already got an account with ChurchX, go ahead and do that. We're listed under the United in Learning catalog with the Call to Be the Church series of courses. I'm doing an open Getting Started in Stewardship seminar tomorrow, doing 2 sessions because it's a national program, and we offer it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then again the same program I'll be leading at 6:30 in the evening. Totally free. Jump on with folks from across the country and sort of put your toe into the stewardship conversation. Love to see you there.
Thank you, Melody. This was great. There are lots of practical tips and guides. It remind me of the congregational ministry that I was in before, and we use Cultivate the Church resource a lot. I did anyway, and there are great resources there that the congregations can use.
Yeah.
So I was grateful for that.
This month's God's Mission, Our Gifts newsletter, which is produced by the Philanthropy Unit. That's an e-newsletter. That's going out, and I know for sure that my colleague Dave Jagger has put in some notes around Advent giving, how you can do a series on giving through Advent. I'm going to be taking advantage of that because I have to write liturgy like it feels like tomorrow for Advent for the church that I'll be working with throughout December. So I invite you to take a look at that as well. I'm going to be putting together an email to respond to folks that registered for the program tonight. When the recording is available, you'll have some follow-up. Again, I mentioned that I've got a sample letter for folks to take a look at that you might want to adapt for your own purposes. Some connections in with ChurchX, some learning opportunities coming up. And always, I have a booking site that you can make an individual or congregational appointment with me at your convenience. You don't have to faff around with, are you free here or can we meet then? You can make the appointment to work and we can connect virtually anytime. So I'm really grateful for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Melody is also available to come in person, but she has to have a very good reason to make the trip down to your area. So if you can gather your neighboring churches together, how many is the minimum number, Melody?
I think it's more than one.
Okay, more than one. So if you want to put a stewardship a night or something and invite Melody to come, she will come. So
but you got to work with your neighbors.
That's right. So collaboration, that's what it is. So
yeah.
I was going to say something. Oh, Melody, the slides that you used tonight, are they going to be available online?
Yes, yeah, I'll put the package together. I'll be working with Donna once again. When the recording's available, we'll make sure that gets out to you sooner rather than later, because hopefully these ideas will help you in the next couple of weeks or so.
Thank you. All right. So this ends Let's Connect Leaders webinar for this year. We have more webinars in the works. And the first one next year in the new year will be Dr. Betty Priest. She's coming back again as our presenter. So please watch out for the information about that early December. We are planning to send that out. And more to come in the new year. So let us go now in peace and live generously with open hands, loving one another as if our lives depend on it. Be good stewards of the gifts you have received, and so that God may be glorified in all that you say and you do. And may the abundant love of God surround you, and may the extravagant grace of Jesus Christ sustain you, and may the constant presence of the Holy Spirit inspire and encourage you in every good deed and word tonight, tomorrow, and every day. Amen.